Today and Across the Fence, we hit the road to check out birds down south. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. As always, on the fourth Wednesday of the month, I'm joined by Mark LaBarr, conservation biologist for Audubon, Vermont. It's nice to see you again.
Always great to be here.
And so today we're going to take, you're going to take us back to some interesting places further down south.
Yeah. If viewers remember, if they saw the show a couple of months back, I did kind of the first part of this where I talked about a trip that I made this past January down to South Carolina. And I did some bird banding there. I've talked about bird banding before. And we were looking at banding on some grasslands down there for some of the sparrows which nest up here, what we call short distance migrants, which, you know, instead of flying down to the tropics or South America, they just take a short leap down to the southern U.S. So we were kind of exploring and seeing what birds we could find at a couple of Audubon centers in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. And so Audubon, South Carolina is part of the same Audubon organization that you belong to?
Correct. So Audubon, Vermont, where I work, and Audubon, South Carolina are both part of the National Audubon Society. We're state programs, and so yeah, we're part of the same organization, although somewhat independent in that, you know, the projects we work on are a little bit different. We're trying to tie these different programs together through our Atlantic Flyway initiative, and so that's one of the reasons that I went down there.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me a little bit about the work that you did.
Well, what they have down, if folks remember, I went down again in January, and I spent the first part of my trip down there at a place called Biologist Forest, which is a large bottomland forest tract that Audubon, South Carolina maintains. And adjacent to those are some restored grasslands. They're working on bringing some of those grasslands back, as well as some landfills.
Which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, so here you've got both systems that need to be, one needs to be managed, they're doing that just for the birds, and the other one needs to be managed for, you know, primarily to protect the plastic cap or the rubber cap that seals the landfill, but can benefit birds as well, because that has to be kept in a grassland state. So we were down there doing that, and the second part we went to another Audubon center. Beidler is down closer to the coast, mm-hmm. and we went to another Audubon center, Silver Bluff Audubon Center, which is closer to Augusta, Georgia, and we were doing some of the same things. They had some 70-acre grasslands which they had been managing, and they wanted to see what birds were there and whether some of these priority bird species were with us.
So tell us how exactly you do that to catch the birds.
Right. Well, first things we do, and what was great about the trip down to both places, and especially up at Silver Bluff, is we had these great volunteers that helped me out. And we would go out and we would set up mist nets. Those are the really fine nets. Here, you know, here we are going out to this managed grassland. It's right along the Savannah River, so Georgia just on the other side. And with those volunteers, we set up a line of mist nets that we would string together using poles. Fortunately for us, there were these mowed sections in between, so it was easy to work there. And we would set up maybe a string of 7 or 8 of these nets.
And I can see why volunteers are really appreciated.
They are. A lot of them, in this case, you know, they'd pound the holes for me, and all I had to do was kind of walk out and stretch the nets, and
set the poles.
Yeah, and they were great, and they were really looking forward to, you know, catching some birds. So it was a big help. And then the other part is, of course, we have to get the birds into the net.
Yeah, you don't just sit around and wait.
No, and you could, but you'd be sitting around and waiting a lot, and
right.
And especially the first couple of days where it's Silver Bluff, it was windy, so the nets flap a little bit, the birds can see them. So having volunteers actually walk through the fields and basically push these birds, oftentimes making noise, clapping, is one way to get the birds up off the ground and into the nets so we can ban them.
And so after you catch the birds, then
Right.
what do you do?
Well, we have...
And we should mention, too, in the birds in the net, they're not injured.
No, they dangle. The nets are designed just to catch the bird, and they get a little tangled up. I have a master banding permit, so the federal government allows me to actually use mist nets and ban birds. Mm-hmm. I have my banding kit. We had a pickup truck, so we spread that stuff out, and it has everything from different pliers that spread the bands. You can see the bands are those little silver twisty things there. They come in different sizes. They all have a number on them, a unique number, so if we ever catch the bird again, we'll know exactly who that bird is. The blue pliers there are ones that actually put the band on. The yellow pliers are for taking the band off. I've got ways of weighing them and measuring their wings and all sorts of stuff. So, and what's nice about this kit is it rolls right up into a little package. There was another bander. Here's me putting a band on one of the birds that we caught. Again, it's like a little, they're made out of aluminum, a little bracelet that the bird will wear. And banding is one of the major tools that ornithologists use and have used over the years for collecting, data on bird migration and bird usage and site fidelity to different locations. We use banding up on Lake Champlain to see how faithful the birds are, the common terns are to the islands that we monitor.
And so why is it important to measure wings and do other things to the birds?
We collect a lot of what's called morphometric data. So we collect things like the length of the wing. We'll often look and try to age the bird. Sometimes measuring a wing length, it's not that important. In some cases, you can actually sex a bird by the wing length. So for instance, a white-throated sparrow, if the wing is greater than 74 millimeters, it's a male. If it's less than 67, it's a female.
I think we have some images of this too that we can take a look at.
And this is me holding, and you can see what we call the wing rule has a stopper at the end, and you just slide it up underneath the wing, and that way you can get a measurement of that. The other thing we look for, and it's funny when I first do this, then people go, as we blow on the bird, we can do that to actually see a brood patch in the summertime. But in this case, because it's winter, I'm basically looking for fat on the bird to see how much fat this bird might be carrying during the winter time. And so we look right up around the neck region, and that, for anybody that's cut up a chicken or anything like that, that yellow globby stuff, subcutaneous fat, is what we're looking for, and we actually score that as well.
So birds should be nice and plump?
Well, it all depends. It depends on how active they are. A lot of birds during migration will plump up, and you'll see fatter birds. In the springtime, we can often catch birds that have stopped and aren't fat, and then other birds that are, and they could be continuing further north. Here we are, volunteers helping me weigh the bird. We use a spring scale. There are digital scales as well, and this gives us an overall body weight for the bird as well. And
okay, so once you've done all that, then what happens?
We get to let them go. And so that's always fun too. Again, you've got volunteers, you've got people there, you've got a bird up close. Some of these birds are little brown birds, as we call them. Most of them are sparrows. So until you get them up close, sometimes you miss some of the delicate plumage characteristics of the birds. And here, this is one of the volunteers. I usually pick the youngsters to start with, although oftentimes you'll see adults move in very close because they'd like to let go of a bird as well.
Right.
But we allow the bird to, put it in the hand, and then we let it go. And for people that are taking pictures, this is usually the picture they see. As you can see, there's no bird there. So by the time, if they don't time it just right, I have so many of these pictures with a volunteer, their hands open, the bird's already gone, but you had that, that second of delay on the bird that you just don't get them flying away.
So what are some of the highlights?
Well, what we did find was it was windy, and so we didn't catch a lot of birds when we were at Silver Bluffs. When we were at Beidler, we had one day where we caught more than 80 different birds.
Wow.
And so that was a busy morning. But we did catch some really cool ones. LeConte sparrow was one that we caught both at Beidler and here at Silver Bluff. This is a great bird. It nests in the upper Midwest and up into Canada. It's got a really striking orange coloration to it. So again, this short distance migrant, just taking a quick drop down to the southeast. And a lot of these short distance migrants are actually showing some large declines, even compared to the longer distance migrants. We also caught some common birds, song sparrows. This is a bird that we have here all summer long in Vermont. So we were able to catch these guys. Not as colorful, but still a nice bird to see down south in January. And then the one big one, which the LeConte sparrow I had held a little bit earlier, but this is a bird that is really declining, the Henslow's sparrow. It is on the state endangered species list here in Vermont, but they haven't been seen in Vermont for probably more than 30 years, if not longer than that. And the interesting story about this bird is we were doing a push where we had the volunteers, and these volunteers saw this bird dive into a clump of grass, and they walked up to it, and they literally had to jump around the clump of grass, and it finally pushed it up into the net. But these birds, they scurry along on the ground. They don't really take flight all that easy, and they duck for cover. So this was a life bird for me. I'd never banded a Henslow sparrow before or held one, so that was great. And again, one of our priority birds for the Atlantic Flyway. You start seeing them nest again across the Midwest. They do nest in New York State, Pennsylvania, and there's been some major projects there to help on the breeding ground. And so what we're looking to do is to maybe help manage some of these grasslands and do what's called full life cycle conservation. So we're catching them up north, we're working with them down south, and hopefully working with them as they migrate through as well. And then another bird, which is it's a declining bird here in Vermont. It's on our Vermont, our list for the Champlain Valley Bird Initiative. This is a field sparrow. So this is a sparrow that nests in those old fields, shrubby fields that are come up often with juniper. We caught, it was our last day, our last push of birds, and we caught a flock of about 18 of these birds. So I ended up sitting on the ground for about a half an hour just banding one after the other, after the other, after the other. But again, really great to see these birds down. That one was actually caught. The other thing that they're doing at Silver Bluff is they're restoring longleaf pine plantations. So this was a plantation that had longleaf pine in it, but it had not gotten to really tree size. So it was a grassland, a temporary grassland there that we caught these birds, and we know that they use those habitats as well.
And so is it hard to find volunteers to help you with these projects?
It's funny because I didn't really have any role in that. I was just the guy from up north to come down and band, and the volunteers were great. Audubon chapter members, the center directors down there at Silver Bluff and both at Beidler were able to recruit these volunteers on different days. When we were at Beidler, we had a group of ROTC folks, so a bunch of high school kids.
Nice.
First time they had seen that stuff. And then up north, we had individuals that were, again, chapter members and just local folks. They saw the state of some of my bird bags. When we catch a bird, we put it in a bag and bring it back to the banding station. So I received a box afterward from one of the volunteers with a whole bunch of new bird bags.
So you had bad bird bags?
Well, they were plain, and the ones that she sent me were all different colors and all sorts of stuff. So she upgraded me a little bit for that. But it was a great team effort, and we got everybody together and got one last shot after we had done a day's worth of banding, and it was not only a successful from the biological perspective in that we were able to document these birds on site, but also from the perspective that we were able to involve the local folks down there and kind of spread the word.
Awesome. I think we have a picture of the team.
Yeah, this is in one of the actual, this last pic, I think if we have it, is in the longleaf pine stand. We actually ran some nets there, but we didn't catch anything. We were hoping for a Bachman sparrow. But you can see that in this situation, even though there's trees there, there's a lot of grassy habitat that's underneath there that we were hoping birds were using, but we weren't lucky on that particular day.
So what's next for this project?
Well, we're now, interestingly enough, beginning to have conversations with the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, because these landfills and these grasslands run up and down the East Coast. Some of them are brown fields or areas that have been cleaned up, and the EPA is looking at ways to manage them. And so we're starting the conversation to see how we might start to map them and identify them, and then try to create, almost a little necklace of these grasslands for the birds to not only winter in and breed in, but also to migrate through.
That sounds like a great idea.
So so we're having, the first conversations came out of, this past June. And again, we're working the landfill managers. It's kind of a win-win situation for them.
I would think so.
Because one of our recommendations is you don't need to cut it like a lawn. So they're saving money on human power as well as fuel to manage these. And some of these landfills are 300 acres. So
awesome.
it's hopefully we're fingers crossed that it works out well for everybody.
We have about a minute left, so we want to take a look at a piece of video that a viewer sent.
Yeah, Randy Pickle from up at Lake Willoughby sent me a video, so I thought I'd put it on here. He says he has a loon that comes and visits him near his house every day. And so he took this video. He was able to get close enough. Oftentimes, you can't get that close.
Right.
And so I just figured I'd bring this on and, give Randy credit. He also had written to me later about saving a couple of sparrows that went in the water. He said the loon wasn't there, but he had to do a sparrow rescue and all sorts of stuff like that. Yes.
Well, thanks for sending that in. And thanks for joining us today. If you have a bird-related question, you can pass it along to Mark. You might want to write to him at Audubon, Vermont, 255 Sherman Hollow Road. That's in Huntington. The zip code is 05462. You can also email your questions to Mark. His email address is mlabarr@audubon.org. Send Mark your questions, and hopefully he'll try to answer them right here on an upcoming edition of Bird Notes. Thanks again.
You're very welcome.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.
For a video copy of today's program, call toll-free 1-888-ATF-3430. Across the Fence is brought to you as a public service by University of Vermont Extension and WCAX-TV.